Hi, my name is Susan Vang, and I am the co-recipient of this year's Context Travel Scholarship to Rome and Florence. Before Devin and I headed to Rome, we both completed extensive research on Rome's history. When we got to Rome, we experienced the differences in culture, food, and history between America and Italy. Almost everything was old in Rome, and it was an amazing experience. We, including Mr. Everett, saw things like the Colosseum, the Vatican and its Sistine Chapel, the Basilica of San Clemente, and many more. I was really inspired by the ruins of San Clemente because I felt that there was a presence in it that made me feel welcome. It was as if I have traveled back in time. Bernini also made a major impact on me as well. I always thought Bernini to be a pompous prig who used connections to get what he wanted. His rivalry with Borromini made me dislike him even more, but in truth, Borromini just had a very depressing life because he was unsocial. The artwork I saw in Rome made Bernini a very inspirational artist to me. One of his sculptures that really captured my attention was Daphne and Apollo in the Borghese. I thought that incorporating the idea of storytelling through a sculpture was crazy, yet amazing. The three-dimensional experience of this sculpture is an idea that is almost impossible, but Bernini made it possible. There is so much movement in his sculpture that it captivated me to come back and make something that would capture movement too, and that is what my sculptures are about. Movement. The creation of movement in Roman art is what really inspired me during my time in Rome, but what clicked for me was the movement of each sculpture or painting. Being an artist and sculptor, I understand the skills required to create a three-dimensional piece of work. Bernini, for example, has become one of my most influential artists in Roman history. It's not that Bernini has the connections and social status to make people like him. No. For me, it was that every single one of his sculptures is magnificent. Every single sculpture he created has movement incorporated in it. For example, Bernini's David. Instead of making one like Michelangelo's, which is standing contrapposto, Bernini's David is full of movement. When we were discussing this particular sculpture, it's as though Bernini's David would actually shoot the slingshot. All of his ideas are great that way, so I wanted to make something that shows movement also. So I created a wire sculpture that has movement in it to show that movement was the thing that influenced and inspired me on this trip. These sculptures are figurines that were inspired by Bernini's Daphne and Apollo because I loved the sculpture. I believe that anyone who sees it will love it also. Now, the Belvedere torso also inspired me. During my research, I wasn't really surprised that Michelangelo loved it because his own paintings and sculptures were based off of masculinity. But seeing the actual thing made me understand why he loved it. This is the work of a man who knew how to do it better than nature, was what Michelangelo said. When I saw it in the Vatican, I was blown away by its perfection. It was sitting on an altar in the Room of the Muses. The Belvedere torso was signed in the front based by an Athenian sculptor by the name of Apollonius, son of Nestor. The sculpture is thought to be either Hercules or Dionysus. Even though this sculpture doesn't have limbs and a head, the form and shape is so great that nothing is detracted. When I walked into the Room of the Muses with the torso in the middle, I was moved. The masculinity for me is perfect in every way. The proportions were just right, and at the same time, the body is curved in a way to make the body seem graceful. The first sculpture that I saw in the Sistine Chapel was the sculpture of Apoxiomenos. This sculpture didn't seem so interesting when I first laid eyes on it, but as I looked closer at the sculpture and its story, it hit me that no matter how unimportant something may be to many of us, in truth it is very important to history. Found in the square vestibule and cabinet of Apoxiomenos in the Vatican is the statue of Apoxiomenos. In Greek, Apoxiomenos means to clean one's self. The sculpture is about an athlete who is scraping the oils from his body to anoint the body before competition. The way he does it is to use sand and a strigil, which is a type of spoon. The sculpture is interesting because of the position and the right arm that is extended. We see that the right arm was also cut just right, without too much weight, and we can see the movement. Even if the sculpture is just standing, that made me want to create something in representation of the sculpture. I pictured the man with blood all over his hands. But in truth, the blood was really the juice of grapes because grapes represented wealth and power in mythology. When I saw the athlete, I immediately thought about the Colosseum and all the bloodshed that had gone during the gladiator fights, and so I added the grapes. Rome is like a fabric to me. It's just full of details. The reason for this particular drawing was to show that for me, I see Rome as a place of detail. Just one little thing has great symbolic meaning, so I painted the draping of the clothing on the man's arms to show that I see Rome as a place with many folds. There's no one single thing that can represent Rome, and so Rome is like this cloth to me. It has so many folds in it that no one can sort through it. At the same time, complicated and worth exploring more because there are still layers and layers of Rome left to go through. For example, the shift from mythology to Christianity is a fold. Even if it isn't physical, the big change in Roman history is a fold, and the shift from many gods to one is a really big fold. Another fold is the time periods of Roman history, such as moving from antiquity to the Dark Ages or to Renaissance Rome, and so it's like a cloth. I may never truly understand what Rome really is, but my experience has been very inspiring and knowledgeable. I have learned and seen so many things that I would have never thought of seeing in Rome and Florence. Thank you to Context Travel staff, docents, friends, St. Hope Academy, Rotary of Sacramento, Miss Mills, and Mr. and Mrs. Everett for making this trip possible.
Insomnia, cause this ain't Wonderland, it damn sure ain't Narnia. And once you cross the line, you can't change your mind. Yeah, I'm a monster, but I'm no Frankenstein. And quite frankly, I